Yeah, I mean, I take issue with a lot of things, I guess, about as far as U.S. foreign policy. That's probably what I've spent the most time. There was a phase I went through last spring where I was doing a lot of online comments, conversations with other people on different websites, usually news websites where you comment on different stories, what's going on around the world. And I've got into it pretty heated, or as heated as an internet discussion can get, arguments with religious people. And yeah. So
and what?
That was,
How did
that was
end up?
my thought, was that if I was going to, with the Curriers, or that time frame, that's when I started thinking of that would be not just a way. I guess I was starting to want publicity, maybe, for some of the stuff I did. Maybe I kept telling myself that wasn't why I was doing that way, but I think that might have been part of it, because I started to get hooked on it a little bit as far as checking up on the news. And so when I first decided to do something in Vermont, that's why I was looking at churches, because I had plans that whoever I was going to take was either going to end up in the church and leave them there for whoever went to the church that weekend to find, or I was going to, burn the church with them in it.
You mentioned publicity, but that's not the way it started. Is that what you're saying? It may have changed to publicity?
Yeah, I definitely got carried away with the publicity aspect of it.
When do you think?
My entire goal up until the Currier thing was to stay under the radar and not have there be any. I mean, for a lot of the stuff that was before that, I couldn't even find stories on. There wasn't anything.
Really? You couldn't find anything on it?
Well, I mean,
was there a time?
Like a one-day thing, maybe, but certainly not something that went on for a year or months or whatever.
And the Curriers was big news from what it sounded like.
Well,
big news for that area.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, and I think that's when it started. Just kept checking back on the story and kind of getting a kick out of the different things that the investigators would say.
Knowing if they're right or wrong.
And then...
Or knowing that they're wrong, you like that?
Yeah, and seeing the difference, because obviously, I mean, I know what happened, seeing the difference from their perspective versus my perspective, and then on top of that, when people would read the news story, then everybody wants to comment on it, like their theories of what happened, and so I got really hooked on that too, because it was entertaining to me, I guess.
Did you join in on any of those? Did you comment?
Yeah, I have.
On the Curriers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did.
What was?
But I was still. I mean, I was pretty paranoid about the Curriers, because that was like the first. That was the first thing I had done that was like really obvious. That it wasn't obvious what happened so much to the investigators, but it was obvious what didn't happen, kind of thing. And so they knew there was something they knew something bad happened, I guess.
But you had done a really good job, though, of distancing yourself. I mean,
yeah, I didn't.
Even from reading the news articles, they were on one totally different track from, so you had done a really good job of distancing yourself. Were you worried that they were gonna connect it to you?
No, I just, my thing was always not to have anything in case anything ever was connected to me.
Got it.
Which is why I didn't keep any of their. I mean, I took some of their jewelry and the gun and stuff, but I didn't. I didn't want to have any of that stuff. Certainly not on me, and nothing found anywhere with my fingerprints or anything on it. And I was concerned about the computer. I couldn't help myself though, because when I first started reading news stories about it, I was super careful. I would use my other computer, or I would do it from an airport or something. I would never use a personal computer that was connected to me. I would go to libraries to check on news stories and stuff. And but then like I said, I got kind of hooked on the publicity, and I would be at home late at night or whatever and be like, well, I wonder if there's any more news stories, like a couple glasses of whiskey, and be like, I'm going to check on that. And then I'd do the searches and read and, start commenting on stuff. And I knew that I was getting stupid, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, but I was still planning ahead. I never had intention of ever being caught with anything.
When was the first time that publicity became an issue? You said the Curriers was big, but when was the first time that you got kind of a taste for that there was?
Well, it's always. I mean, I would always check on stuff that I had done, but.
But in the beginning, it was curiosity to see if they had any leaks.
Yeah, or even if it was suspected of being a crime.
Were there times when people didn't even notice?
Yeah, well, I mean, just like that house in Texas, like, if you're not connected to it and you don't even live in the area and there's no obvious reason for doing it, then a lot of times they don't even, or maybe they suspect it's a crime, but they would never guess that it's just some random thing that somebody did. I mean, if they're going to think it's a crime, they would look at probably whoever owns the property, or
They're not going to come to Alaska looking for you,
right? So but I did. I started doing a lot of in the last year. I started doing a lot of stuff on Kimberly's computer, the one that was at the house, and I knew that it was dumb, and I got that laptop, and my thought was get Kimberly a new computer and toss that one, and then just start doing everything on a laptop and just replace the laptop every year or whatever. So
and you said that you used to do that too with your computer that you brought up with you from Washington.
Yeah, I don't have that one anymore. It got to where that computer was so outdated. I got fed up with it, so that's why I started just using hers.
That's the one you tossed in the landfill, the old one.
Yeah.
Did you just throw that away? Just threw it in the
I think it
garbage
was
can?
huh?
Just threw it in the garbage can, or you took it out there yourself?
No, I took it out to the landfill.
Okay. Do anything to it other than just throw it away? I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, everything that goes in my trailer gets pretty thoroughly smashed. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you found it, you might still get stuff off of it, but I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, landfill in the wintertime, they just bury everything with snow and everything else. So.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I could just go back to the when you're traveling in Texas, where you went. I know you went to Houston, New Orleans, back to Dallas, and then you said you went south on those days, 13th, 14th, and did driving around south. Did you stay in Texas?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I was, like I said, I was kind of out of control. There was forget the name of the town. I think it was called Glen Rose or Glen something, and it was south of Cleburne or something. And I stopped at this river park, and I was just hanging out there. and it was getting pretty late, and there was a woman who came, and she was going for like a walk on the trails up and down the river or something, and I almost went after her. She had a big dog with her. It was like a mastiff or something, but I was gonna shoot the dog. I don't know. I wasn't. I definitely wasn't planning things through in Texas. I just wasn't. I was kind of just looking for something.
Were there any other crimes?
No.
How about when you
just
went?
the bank robbery.
What about when you went back later? Your second trip? Any other crimes then?
No.
How about between the Curriers and the Samantha Coney case?
No, not really anything to speak of.
And before the Curriers, I know you don't want to talk a lot about that, but what was the time frame prior to the Curriers? That you had done any other crimes? before that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what you mean by time frame.
Did months? Because you said that after the Curriers, you came back and you were kind of calm for a bunch of months.
Oh, after.
After the Curriers.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking back before the Curriers. Did that kind of same thing happen? Was it like, was there a crime and then you were calm, or was there like?
Yeah, no, there was. Like I say, up until I thought I was good for a while after the Currier case.
Well, again, we're not talking about Alaska, but I mean before that, did you go through that same kind of process?
Yeah.
Previously?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking.
That was. It's like I say, it's not so much about money, or it's about a lot of things, but they're all it's all stuff like internal in the way I think. I would do something, and then I would go back like business as usual, and go out with friends, go out to bars, talk to them, see people, and it was all like a mind game with me. That was all I needed. That was my adrenaline. That's where I got my kicks, I guess, was being able to live two different lives and have no one have a clue, and it became even more so when even like when I was in Nia Bay and had a regular 9-to-5 job basically, and some of the guys I would work with, they'd like to talk shit about how dumb criminals are, and they would talk about this news story or that news story, and I rarely would talk about stuff, and I rarely would drink very much when I was hanging out with friends, because I'd be afraid I'd start talking about stuff. So, but that's always how I got my kicks, I guess, was just being able to look at people while they were talking to me and thinking that, for all the years they've known me, they actually don't know me at all, really. Mm-hmm. And that's why I could go a relatively long time before, feeling like I had to, before getting bored, I guess, and doing something.
How long is that generally?
I'm not going to say anything about that.
I tried. And you said something about the money. You got a lot of money with that Texas bank robbery, didn't you?
Not really. I think it was around $10,000.
Okay. That's a lot of money for a bank robbery, isn't it?
No. I mean, first.
You've
no.
gotten more?
Not going to say anything about that.
What'd you do with all that money?
Money's easy to get rid of.
We got the Walmart cards and stuff that you bought. You put
Right.
cash on Walmart cards.
Did you do something with all of it? There's not like a buried cache of money in Texas?
No, there was a buried stash of money in Texas. But no, that's what they found me with, was the money that I dug back up in Texas.
The leftover?
Yeah.
What was the whole getting stuck in the mud thing in Texas? Where was that?
Oh, that was down south. I was out looking at churches and houses.
Was that before
The bank robbery.
the bank? It was before the bank robbery. Okay.
Yeah, that whole thing kind of backfired on me because I was thinking I had plenty of time to go down south and do something. I just felt like I needed to get away from everybody and clear my head because I didn't really feel like I was in. I was having a hard time acting normal, I guess, and so I just decided to get away and go down and I had been thinking about doing a bank robbery, so I was driving around, but the more I drove around, I was thinking I wasn't going to do it because there were so many cameras in Texas and there were so many police and there were fences everywhere. You know, it just was a lot different than most of the places I've done stuff. And yeah, and then I missed the flight that I had scheduled. And I could have, I mean, I had clients who probably would have put money in the account. But after that, I mean, after I missed the flight, my mom, she loaned me some money or something. And I was like, well, now I'm going to do a bank robbery because I'm not going to call my clients and ask them for money. That's just a pain. So.
Did you actually get stuck in the mud tunnel?
Yeah.
And somebody had to pull you out?
No, I actually got out by myself. But. But no, I just the longer I stayed out of Dallas, the longer I was down south, the more I was thinking I wanted to do something else. So.
Can I go back to the Curriers for a second?
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things that they're going to want to know down there. Are they going to find any fingerprints in the house, or do you know?
No.
That what you told me was you wore gloves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the Curriers, you told me that it was random how you picked them out. There wasn't a reason.
Well, it was. I mean, I didn't know them.
Yeah.
It wasn't random, like how I picked.
So how did you choose them?
Well, I'll tell that story to a point. I was in the hotel that. I'm trying to remember. I was driving around. Well, first of all, I was fishing. So I was fishing and driving around. I had got a Vermont fishing license. That was kind of my alibi for being there, I guess. And plus, I just wanted to check out the area. So I was doing a lot of driving around, and I was looking for churches, houses, and I was in the motel that I had stayed at couple other times, I think, and I was also in that area because I wanted to dig up those guns that I had buried there. They had been there for a few years, and I wanted to check on them, make sure they weren't full of water. And so I think the way it worked is I went fishing for a day, then I went down and found the guns, brought them back up to the motel room, and worked on them for a while, getting everything working again. And then I found that house, and it was exactly what I was looking for. And started to think that I would do, I would go all out and just do a bunch of stuff. Like if I was kind of thinking, if I'm going to do something here, I'm going to go all out and do a bunch of stuff. So the plan was, I was in the hotel that evening, the evening before before they were reported missing or whatever. I had all of the guns ready to go, and I had on, actually I think it was that same jacket that you found me with, that rain jacket. And I started walking around town at about 8 or 9 o'clock after it had got dark, and I was looking for someone to carjack. Because I already had, so I had my backpack with me. It had a bunch of stuff in it, like cable ties and duct tape and some stuff for like blindfolds or something. And went across the road from the hotel and had a apartment complex there staked out, and I was waiting for someone to come in alone. And I was also looking for someone who was coming in a decent car that was fairly generic, because my thought was the next day after I got done with whoever I took, I was going to take their car, and I had 3 banks staked out in different towns, starting quite a ways north of Burlington. There's, I think, Highway 15 went up north and did like a loop, and there were several towns along that route. And so starting up north, I had a bank staked out at the top of the loop. I forget the name of the town. And then there were 2 more towns in a row right on the way back to Burlington. Both had small banks in them. My plan was to take whoever's car I took up to the furthest north one and hit that, and then drive back down Route 15 and hit the other 2 banks on my way back to Burlington, and then dump the car in Burlington and just move everything into my car and check out of the hotel and leave that day. So so that's what I was had this apartment staked out. I was actually looking for a guy, and it was pouring rain, big lightning storm, and there was a guy who came in. He was in a yellow V-dub Bug, newer one, and he's almost he almost got it that night. If he hadn't got out of the car, he had been about 5 seconds slower getting out of his car and going into the apartment, he would have been the one that night. But like I said, it was raining, so I walked out of this little wooded area, and I was walking up behind his car, and he kind of, or walking along the line of cars towards his car, and he kind of jumped out. He had like a newspaper over his head, and he ran into the apartment, keep from getting wet. But yeah, that would have been my first choice, I guess. But I was waiting for the right opportunity. So when that didn't work out, I wasn't that worried about it. I just waited till later. I was just walking around, and I think I went back to the hotel for a little while to wait till after midnight. And there was nobody out that night because it was still raining off and on. And I went out, when the carjacking thing didn't work out, I decided I was going to look for a house with a couple in it. And, with a car, decent car. And so I started walking through neighborhoods back behind the hotel. And I was looking for a house that didn't look like it had a dog. I was looking for a single car garage with no cars parked outside. And I was looking for a fairly easy way to get into the garage. And theirs was the first house I found that had all those things once I got into the garage. the car was unlocked, and I looked in, checked out the registration. I think I found out that it was registered to a woman, and I think there was something else in the car that had her birth date on it, so I knew, about the age of the couple that was there.
Did that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I was also looking for, I didn't want to go into a house where there were kids. So I was checking for those things in the garage, like anything related to kids, and I checked the back seat of their car to make sure there wasn't dog hair and stuff in it. And yeah, once I found out that it was the right house, and I knew that they were home because I could, I had walked around the house and they had I could hear some fans running in the bedroom, so I knew what bedroom they were sleeping in. And their house was locked up really tight. It was, there was no way into the house. I got, even the garage door, the door between the house and the garage had a deadbolt. I was able to get the outer door, it had like a screen door. I was able to jimmy the lock on that one, but the door behind it had a deadbolt. So I knew I was going to have to break the window to get into the house, but I wasn't really worried about that because it was inside the garage. I didn't think anybody would hear.
Was there a window between the garage and the house? Or
No, it was just the window and the door.
to the garage?
Right, the man door was like between the house and the garage. And the garage, other than the window, they had left a window open in the garage. There was one window on the side of the house that had a fan in it, and I grabbed one of their chairs in the backyard and took the fan out of the window and just crawled through the window. And then once I got into the garage and decided that it was the right house, the garage had a back door on it too, to the backyard, and I unlocked the deadbolt on that, and kind of checked out the neighborhood, made sure was checking out all the other houses around there, make sure that there wasn't anybody up. And the house right next door from the street, it would have been the house on the left. They had a dog that they kept letting out. It was like a big golden retriever or something, and it kept barking. And there was a guy who kept coming out and smoking cigarettes. So I just kept waiting. I just kept hanging out around their house, and then once it seemed like that house or that guy had, I don't remember if he left or if he went to bed or what. He wasn't coming out of the house anymore, and it seems like they had locked their dog back inside. I went back into the garage, and by then I think it was probably 1 or 2, and yep, that's when it happened.
So they were up in their bedroom.
Yeah, it was a ranch house.
So first floor bedroom.
Yeah.
So choosing them kind of had more to do with the surroundings more so than you didn't even see them then prior to
Getting in there.
to getting into the
I
house
think
from
there
what it
was a
sounds like.
picture in the car, maybe.
Did that play any part in it, or was it?
Not so much.
Okay.
More had to do with like the one thing I won't do is mess with kids. I don't. That's another thing that kind of goes back to me starting to feel like I was losing control a little bit, because I had never really thought that way until I had Lainey, until Lainey was born. And then after she was born, I didn't, something kind of changed in the way I thought, and I didn't want to do anything that would mess with kids or whatever.
Sure, that makes sense.
But other than that, it's never really been about. I mean, until very recently, it wasn't really about that. Like I say, before them, I was looking for a guy to carjack.
Mm-hmm.
So
Once you got their car, then you go through the plan on the banks, or
I was going to. The next morning, I had their car, and the car actually had some pretty serious mechanical problems, and I had visions of me going way up north of Burlington and breaking down with a car full of cash. So I decided maybe that wasn't the best time to do it, and just drove back towards Burlington and parked the car in some apartment complex.
Yeah, why did you choose that place to park it?
It was within walking distance of the hotel, and I didn't see any cameras in the parking lot. I probably could have found a better place. I didn't really think that part through very well. I remember thinking after like a day or two after I had left the car there, I was thinking, well, if the cops find it, because I didn't want to stay in Burlington for another night. Originally, I was planning on, like, if I had robbed the banks, I would have planned on staying in Burlington in a different hotel that night, and then taking their car down to, there was a park by the river down by where I buried the guns, and I was going to take whatever car I stole down there and torch it.
Not in New York. I mean, down in Burlington by the river.
Yeah, in Burlington. There's a river, right there in Burlington, not far from the hotel I was in.
And that's where the guns were buried.
Yeah. And but when the bank thing didn't happen, I decided I wasn't really going to worry about torching the car. But then when I was up in Maine, I started thinking about it. I was like, well, why didn't I stay there and just torch the car just to be on the safe side? I started getting paranoid that, because I wore gloves the whole time I was driving the car, but I wasn't wearing a hat, and I had really long hair at the time, and I was thinking they could easily find some of my hair and get a DNA and eventually tie it back to me. So I was thinking, well, to be on the safe side, I really should have torched that car anyway. And so I decided to take the same route back from Maine and just drive by the complex and see if I figured if they hadn't found the car, I would have stayed in Burlington that night and gone and picked it up and torched it that night. But when I drove by the complex, I saw that there was crime scene tape where the car had been. So I was like, okay, that answers that question. They found the car. So
did you have facial hair?
No.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't. I've never had a big.
Just long hair. When you had your long hair.
Yeah.
When you went into their house and you confronted them, did you put them? Was it at gunpoint into their own car?
Yeah. I mean,
how did you get them to get in the car? And did you drive? Did they drive?
No, I drove. I did.
The backpack that you said you had cable ties, duct tape, that kind of stuff. Was that stuff you brought with you from Alaska?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think actually some of that stuff was buried. A lot of that stuff was buried with the guns.
In Burlington?
Yeah. There's probably some of that stuff in I don't remember what all I left in the gun bucket. The bucket in New York. There might be some of that stuff in that one too. I usually have road flares in them too, like the road flares I use them, like it's a handy way to start a fire.
And you said that those guns had been in Burlington for a couple of years. That's why you had to get them. Were they rusty?
The 40 cal and one of the other guns that's in New York had been there for a few years. Yeah.
Why did you bury them there, and why had you left them for years in that location?
Well, it was a good spot.
Well, people,
And I knew I would be back to that area, so.
it's just that a lot of people don't do that. Don't think of burying stuff,
Ha!
right? I mean, so that's
Come
why.
on, everybody loves buried treasure.
Yeah. Did you ever have any of your buried treasure found?
No.
By a random person.
Or forget where you put it?
Well, I'm sure eventually I'll forget.
But you haven't yet. Up until this point, you haven't forgotten anything.
No. You told us you're going to tell us that sometime, so you won't forget. You'll get there, right?
Yeah. Frankly, even though it was only a few months ago, I'm kind of surprised that I've been able to find it. I mean, I remember what every place looks like, but looking at it just from satellite view, that's kind of different. So.
Yeah, that is different.
Can we go back to the house, the arson? Can you describe what the house looked like, just in case this was just a quick search, but in case we can't find it?
It was a ranch house. I think it was brick, like red brick, and had a 2-car garage, and then the detached garage / workshop area.
Was it off kind of by itself, or pretty close to other houses?
Oh, there were other houses within sight. I mean,
Okay.
Actually, one of them seems like it was really close. There was one that was pretty close, I think.
And you said about 4 or 5 miles south of Alto, you thought?
Yes.
Southwest.
I think it was southwest, yeah. Can't remember the name of the street it was on. Stark, maybe? I don't know.
Okay.